All right, this one's a big one, so hold on to your butts. Chapter 14, Search Engines. If you gain nothing else from this book, really let the next sentence sink in. You don't see things on the internet, you search for them. Whether it's by active searches or passive preferences, you search for things on the internet. You can see a single tree on a search for a forest, but in real life. But on the internet, every web page you view is an interesting mix of the things you want to see and things like you want to see. These things make up the full view of the electronic forest seen when any single tree is searched for. And that's why my personal Facebook account, the algorithms keep asking me to check out this Mike Van Gogh guy and his writing. Apparently the program that track what I read online, read and watch online, thinks I'd like me. I have separate Facebook accounts for my personal and my writing lives. So this puts a massive onus on the person behind the mouse and keyboard to what they see and find online. As access to the web becomes more and more ubiquitous, with higher and higher mobile internet speeds, knowing this fact will be important to the Christian. The first way this affects the believer is that if they sin online, it's almost always going to be a sin of commission. A guy who grew up with an internet where porn pop-up ads were a thing, I know how dangerously surprising these situations can be. Yet I know that every time I unexpectedly found myself looking at digital nakedness, it was because I went where I shouldn't have and looked at sites and content that led to worse. Reddit is a great example of this. On Reddit, users can customize their feeds to a daily flow of articles, pictures, and videos. Their front feed is a conglomerate of what they have selected and what they want to see. There is an option for seeing only the newest content hitting the site, and this option is available no matter what you set your subreddit as your subreddits. This allows you to go to see a subreddit, choose that is new from all possible chosen that's from new from all possible subreddits. Oh, that was horrible, including not safe for work ones. Even solely pornographic ones. It takes about a day for the site's moderators to catch these and flag them as not safe for work, or to ban the posts outright if they're truly wrong. The option perfectly expresses the search-find nature of every internet interaction. Our tech will never be able to remove the nature of agency online. If we see questionable content, it's because we chose to look in that general direction. There is, however, no accidental temptations online. The poster of the nude selfie and the viewer of the selfie are both enter into a contract with reality on the same level. That's what it means to practice. What it means in practice is that content of any sort is predicated on the search terms that it can be found by. This isn't by the reality of SEO. This isn't just the reality for SEO experts. It's the reality of doing any sort of ministry online. As a fan of exegetical preaching, this really hurts because I would love to see sermons on YouTube categorized by their Bible verse usage, but it would make looking things up really easy. But on one of the most connected social media platforms to date, geeks finding sermons based on Bible verses is its least desirable use. In the parable of the servant and the talents, we read about Jesus viewing an opportunity and risk in a very compelling way, maybe one not often applied to the realities of the internet. For it will be like a man going on a journey who has called his servants and entrusted them with his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1. And he gave each according to his ability, and then went away. And he who had received 5 talents went away at once and traded with them, and he who had made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents, who made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went away and dug into the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing the 5 talents more, saying, Master, you have delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 more. And his master said, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who had the 2 talents came forward and said, Master, you have delivered me 2 talents, and here I have delivered 2 more talents. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, so I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering what you did not where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours. But the master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew where I reaped where I have not sown, and gathered where I have not scattered seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at least I should have received some interest. So, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has more will be given, and he who and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And he casts the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In the place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25:14-30 ESV. What if the internet is the risk of people using a hidey hole in lieu of a hedge fund in this parable? It can be too easily glossed over that the world has never been more connected than it is right now, and that now is a moving target heading up. Posting information online has to be in the context of if that information can be shared, and if it should be shared, and more importantly, if it can be found, and if it should be found. Nothing makes my skin crawl more than online than not being able to Google search my own content, because if I can't find it, neither can anyone else. Alternatively, I hate, like hangnails and pepper spray hate, clickbait titles. Saying something is one thing when it's another is lying, plain and simple. But the trouble with the internet is that we often get 5 to 15 words that will show up in a title to describe whether or not we will click. Much of what we may want people to find as things on the internet, we can't fall into clickbait trap and use deception to get people to hear with 5 minutes of a sermon that they weren't actually looking for. So hear me out. No one will be tricked into heaven, and flirting with clickbait is a lie waiting to happen. What about the things you don't search for in the ever-present Rule 34? And before we go any further, do not Google Rule 34. There are things that are going to show up that you didn't want to search for, because the algorithms that give you what your search results are best look for matches to keywords to the nth degree. And here's what I assume is the clearest evidence that Satan works on the web. Excuse me. Rule 34 is tragically, if not so fictional rule that exists on the internet, that if it exists on the internet, there is porn of it on the internet. Rule 34 started on 4chan.com, along with a fictional set of other rules not worth searching for, and through it revealed the truth that the internet is not a place, is not about the internet, is not, and through it revealed the truth about the internet is not preached about when it reaches the pulpit, that sin lurks on the web, that we've been told for years that the devil is a lion roaring on the prowl, looking to catch us off guard, 1 Peter 5:8. Nothing illustrates this better than the fact that you can type anything and find porn in the image search results related to a person, place, or thing. Most theologians struggle with the real-world consequences of total depravity, but the internet made it into a pornographic meme inside of a decade. So how do we deal with this roaring lion? I think we need to take a big, deep look at the internet as a place, not just a thing. It really is both, and it changes how we can approach this problem. Both as a place, we need to understand that sinners are going to be present and most likely going to post sinful things. This should convince us being in the internet's barrage of content is not worth it. Posting the gospel-centered, theologically sound content is never a bad idea, but try to think of sin on the internet as a lion on a 100-acre farm. If you and the lion are on opposite sides of the farm, there are 100 acres between you and danger. For the most part of the web, you are not in danger, but you will be in the vicinity of danger, and that's something that you want to be prepared for. A Christian should not timidly or flippantly go online knowing that the lion prowls, just like a farmer would harvest any crop on the farm without being prepared to shoot a lion. To be prepared for dealing with a lion of Rule 34 type sin online, we need the right kind of weapons to scare it off, and cause it as much trouble when we face it. A nice buckshot of the mix of block and unsubscribe tend to do the trick, and I like the caliber of report functions too. These three options need to be present in civilized society, that is the internet. Without them, anyone can post anything, which means you could have anything resembling a market demographic. In the order to host kid-friendly content online, websites need to have a system in place to keep un-kid-friendly content off their site. Similarly, you'll never see sermons hosted very long on youporn.com. We need to be courageous enough to block Twitter followers whose content is blatantly sinful, even if they followed us first. We need to block the offensive people on our pages who are only there to help the lion claim another victim. The idea of a totally democratic internet, where anyone can go anywhere, leaves a lot of room for people to do horrible things to one another. And because so much of our viewing online is based on subscriptions and followers, we need to make conscious that a choice not to follow things that can go south quickly, and not to follow or allow following from people who strive to make sin present, even if it's in ignorance. William J. Thoms put it nicely, "Be careful how you live. You might be the only Bible some people ever read." And I think it captures it nicely. A Christian can can just as much preach the gospel in disassociation with troublesome forums and subscriptions as an act of devotion to Christ who died for those sins. And they can brave those dark corners of the internet in hope of converting posters of any and all kinds of sin in opposition to Christ. A final note, though. When we get into it more in another book, somewhere to consider when thinking of search engines is when AI starts to consider the gospel. Professor Scott Galloway started in his Amazon Professional Seller Summit keynote in 2017. 1/5 of queries on Google or to Google have never been asked before in the history of mankind. What rabbi, cleric, priest, coach, professor has so much credibility that 1 in 5 questions posted to that individual have never been asked in the history of mankind? This is strange new territory for man, and the simple, non-aggressive act of searching for things online is slowly becoming the modern-made God. Man-made God. Pagans used to pray to unseen gods represented by wooden idols and stone statues, and now they look for crude information and a summary of results based on that information. Right now, Google sorts through billions of bytes of information to bring you what your search results in a matter of seconds. What will happen when the machines that do that become advanced enough to think for themselves? When eventually we have AI computers like the ones we grew up watching on Star Trek, ones that can think and reason and question the meaning of life with a cat named Spot. That was an interesting day that they are tasked to find the search results for a blooming atheist question of did Jesus really resurrect from the grave? And Google answers like a Christian instead of a search engine. In the information sought after by humanity in lieu of a God to pray to, points to God because it is in fact a truth claim. What then? If the gospel is truth, then you would think that the subject of good news would be the top-ranking search result. Maybe we should be asking Google maybe we shouldn't be asking if Google will ever disprove God, but what really happens when God, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing God, converts Google as his tool for building of his kingdom online? Right now, Google searches through keywords, which allows people to post articles and videos that aren't about Jesus, but saving, but rather against it. When the Google machine begins considering the entirety of everything posted to the internet, we might just have machines stating as fact what we have only ever had as belief. This is why being an authentic Christian online is important, where you have a real chance to prove in 0.0000003 seconds per search that Jesus is Lord, by contributing to the internet's very fabric, by making our content and theology searchable so that when people ask Google about a topic, it shows in the search results. So that's a very long chapter, and it details some of my thoughts on AI on the back end, which I haven't changed on and stuff like that. But there is one statement where I talk about the internet being a place, not a thing, or at least being considered a place, not a thing. And my view has obviously changed on that. I don't view the internet as a place anymore. That is a deception that's being placed on people, that we're really interacting with a thing that looks like a place. And that would change how you view this search stuff. The search stuff now is like people interacting with a book's table of contents, if you want to really boil it down to something like low tech. And that's what's kind of happening here. And I also talk about a section there where you don't find sermons on sites like youporn.com, which is one of my criticisms of the online church, insisting that it can be online only, is that you often hear them talk about places that you need to focus on one platform or a few platforms to really kind of engage with your community and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I agree that focusing on a platform is smart, and it's conservation of resources and stuff. But in an online context, if you're trying to find sinners, evangelistically in an online context, if church is just church online, that's one thing. But if church is trying to do what church is supposed to do and reach people for the gospel, then Pornhub is exactly where you want to be posting sermons. It's exactly where you want to be preaching the gospel. That is the modern day Corinth that Paul would have gone to if he started a blog. He would be posting stuff where the sinners are. And how are you going to do that without being exposed to the kinds of sin that would tempt you themselves? We haven't sorted that stuff out. We haven't figured out a way how to get content on without engaging with a site where you're going to get tempted. There's no access there because we're actually not taking ministry online as seriously as it should be. We're just taking it as seriously as it needs to be able to fill the needs in the moment. And we saw that across the board as everyone just did the bare minimum to get online. for COVID and then claimed it was the same thing as church in person. It's because it was a needs base. What do we need in order to get online so that we can have our church back? And that's not what church is. Church is supposed to be an outpouring of the Spirit, a gathering of the saints, and building up of believers. And you see this because we don't have answers for these hard questions. And it's only going to get crazier. Like I called the AI thing, in this chapter, and ChatGPT showed up on schedule, and now you have people talking about using it, by feeding it nothing but the Bible so that we can get new words from God by asking ChatGPT what it would say about this stuff, as if it was God speaking from the Bible, when really it's just a program speaking using answers from the Bible. It's getting crazier and crazier every day because we're not taking the internet seriously or technology seriously as churches and as theologians. So that's one of the reasons why I read this book. That section's going to get a massive addendum at the back end. But I hope you liked it, and we will talk to you guys soon.